digital technologies and institutional governance. How have digital technologies been used? What we've seen in our study is that university leaders in these more hierarchical governance settings, they have problems in building administrative capacity. There's a problem of cost, of understanding and dealing with cost issues. There's not enough resources to enable strategic actions in a hierarchical university. And there are problems of role interpretation. So what's going to be the role of the university leader in a setting? How will digital technologies be used? But also, how can leaders develop digital technology strategies that are really going to be effective and, for example, lead to a new organizational identity? So what this means in practice is that even though we moved away, or at least wanted to move away from this loosely coupled anarchic organization that we've been working in for a long time, to a more tightly coupled organization, one key issue is coordination problems. And that's a very important barrier for organizational identity. It's just one reflection on what it takes to move from where we are now to where society wants us to be and where we want to be ourselves in 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now. And one key element is also in this, how do we deal with our traditional disciplinary silos, as they are called often. We can't simply replace the disciplinary organization, the disciplinary-based organization of our university and faculties and departments by an interdisciplinary structure. How do we find a balance between promoting interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity? How do we combine that with a strong disciplinary foundation? Finally, we've been talking about government. Let me share with you the strategy of the Norwegian government when it comes to the use of digital technologies in universities, addressed in the title of a recent policy paper as Digital Transformation of Norwegian Society and the Role of Universities in it. And it's lots of words, like all government papers. So it's always a challenge. What's the message in here? What can we learn from it? Where do we have to really pay attention? Now, one thing that is good in these kinds of policy papers is that our governments, at least the Norwegian one, have understood that this is a key issue of transformation of our society, the digital transformation. So it's a very detailed paper. It's in English, so those of you interested, I can definitely send you a copy. And it's got a lot of interesting elements in it, and it was co-produced by government, societal actors, economic actors, and universities. And it talks about educational quality. It talks about skills for professions. So the universities, when talking about digital technologies, do not only have to take into account how that affects their own primary processes, but more importantly for society, how can we make sure that the universities contribute to the development of digital skills for all the professions in society? How can we contribute to enhancing opportunities for lifelong learning, upskilling and reskilling? How can we build on the lessons from the pandemic, where we learned a lot, but I'm not sure that we have already started to take into account what we actually have learned? The quicker use of knowledge, when it comes to research, relationship with the labor market and society, all kinds of issues. And then the transformation of the university that the government of Norway is referring to in this paper is, sorry for this, improving the university's primary processes and promoting management, culture and organization that the universities need to achieve the goal of transforming the institution using digital technology. That's a mouthful, but it does refer to transformation and not to becoming better at what we're doing at the moment. What are aims and expectations? What is the input from the universities? All of that is at stake when we interact with our governments, with our ministries. But one thing is also in the Norwegian case, with a very clear relationship between government and universities, one thing is not clear. Is the government expecting that the universities become better at what they're doing by using digital technologies, or does the government want a new type of university? And both messages are in this paper, and it is kind of left to the universities to develop that question, where is it that they want us to go? We have to provide the answers. Now, one thing that is also of importance is that the complexity of the impact of digital technologies on universities is such that in a country like Norway, it's not just this paper that I'm focusing on, which addresses directly the digital transformation in universities, but in this paper there's a reference to all these other policy documents. The overall long-term plan for higher education and science, quality, mobility, labor market governance, but also the national strategy on artificial intelligence, the national strategy for digital security, the national strategy for making data available and shared, and the strategy for flexible and decentralized education, not just in the universities and vocational colleges, but all the way down to primary education, maybe even the kindergarten. So this question of digital technologies and the impact on our primary processes is embedded in a large set of strategies, policies, expectations, and questions. In this specific paper, there are 6 strategies, and I won't bore you with all the details. As said, those of you interested, I really recommend to read the copy. But here are the strategies that the government has presented. And one of them, strategy 3, I will look at it in a bit more detail to show you what's going on. That's digital themes, methods, and skills in all subjects offered at the universities and colleges. There are ambitions that the government has and that the government shares with the universities. Like students should learn digitalization relevant topics in developing interaction with the rest of the academic content of the course. There are challenges, and there are concepts for digital skills. What do digital skills mean? It's elaborated. It's not just these terms. And there's an argument that universities lack the understanding of the labor market. What are the skills, the digital skills needed in the labor market? There are opportunities. There are requirements. For example, the development of the subject areas requires deep professional insight and understanding of the possibilities that lie in the use of digital technology in each individual subject, and it needs new pedagogical approaches. And it goes on and on and on, but it provides us with the way in which our contextual framework conditions are being interpreted and are being governed and are being further developed. Requirements, ethical issues, collaboration, a key word, standardization, areas of action, stimulate basic academic development of research, education, interaction with digital development, develop employee skills, develop a culture, establish processes at the institution so that they may better provide a sufficient study offer for the education of ICT specialists in society. Because that's one key issue why governments are interested in. If the universities are not contributing to developing the digital skills of the professions in society, who else is going to do it? And gender balance and diversity are key issues in the Norwegian society. So these areas of action are areas where the universities are directly expected to respond and to develop their own strategies. And the visions that are provided in this paper address the student, the teacher, the researcher, the management of the universities, and the labor market and society. And there are requirements about economic conditions. The cost issue is crucial. The cooperation, not just nationally, internationally, etc. So this is not going to happen out of the blue. And this is not going to happen because we want it or because we don't want it. It's going to happen because the whole society is developing and looking at us and expecting that we understand what they are expecting of us, and that we work on developing our own strategies, not necessarily to satisfy societies and the political expectations and requirements, but also to provide many of the answers, for example, about the governance of artificial intelligence that society is struggling with. Now let me finish here with some possible implications for African universities. The first is the meaning and the interpretation of the notion of digital transformation within the African and within your own national context within Africa. What does digital transformation of universities mean in your context? Is it using digital technologies for strengthening what is, for making your university a better university, or is it for creating new university identities? And given, as we also heard in some of the parallel sessions yesterday, that in the use of digital technologies, African universities are kind of leapfrogging. The use of digital technologies in many African universities is at least as innovative as what we see, for example, in Europe, if not more innovative. How can that contribute to either further strengthening what is, or for creating what is probably more at stake, a new university identity? These strategies, like the Norwegian one, are relevant. It's not the only one that's relevant, but governments are working on these kind of strategies. Also international organizations, the private sector, other public sector organizations. So look at what are the key features, what are the ambitions, what are the opportunities, where can universities contribute, how can they respond, how can they be part of this transformation, and maybe even lead the transformation in key areas. Collaboration, cooperation, interinstitutional is crucial. I showed you these general purpose technologies. They are not only pervasive, but they lead to innovation and they transform very rapidly. So we've got to make sure that through collaboration, we contribute to the development and the spreading of these improvements and innovations of digital technologies. We are in the forefront, at least to some extent, and we got to make sure that we stay there, because otherwise our role will be obsolete. And part of that is standardization. An organization like ARUA could play a role there. There are other ways in which you can develop standardization, but it's extremely important that our digital communications are standardized. Otherwise, we will create towers of Babel, and they are worse than the ivory towers. And then the awareness of the opportunities, challenges of these emerging new technologies, these general purpose technologies, artificial intelligence. Where are we? What is the way in which universities can really be part of the efforts to control the explosions of intelligence that are bound to happen? And the green technologies, sustainability, extremely important that we make sure that we contribute to it in all possible ways. And for example, the Center for Climate Change, the Center of Excellence Climate Change and Development of ARUA is a very important example of universities collaborating to contribute to green transformation and development of green technologies. And finally, we got to make sure that we use the opportunities attached to digital technologies to build strategic partnerships with society. There are many good examples already, but there are many opportunities that haven't been used until now. Smart cities. We need to look at issues like transportation, energy use, waste, recycling in our cities, in our immediate environments. That goes for Lagos as well as for Oslo. Smart cities. How can we use the technologies that we have been contributing to in their development in linking to societies in a way that provides solutions for some of the basic challenges that we face. Renewable energy, another clear example. So opportunities, identities, challenges, all these keywords are around us, but I think we are in a stage as universities, a stage of transformation where we still have a lot of the control over the answer to the question, what kind of university for what kind of society? We have control over it, but we better make sure that we use it, because otherwise we will lose the control and someone else will tell us what kind of university we will going to be, or we might even lose our position in society. Thank you very much for your attention.
Phew. It's quite a bit to absorb. Thank you very much, Peter, for this very incisive, thought-provoking, and stimulating lecture. You traversed a wide area in a very short space of time, really looking at technology in a rapidly changing world, a world which has become technologically driven. So thank you so much for this. And you have touched on many important issues, and you have challenged us to think and think very carefully about the university going forward. You have mentioned, as relates to AI, artificial intelligence, the explosion of intelligence and the challenges that might come with that, relating to governance, for example, different models and conceptions of the university. And of course, very critically, how will technology and AI impact on universities? You have asked us to reflect on whether these technologies help us define our new organizational identity, so reinforce our current ones. But perhaps more pertinently, how do we deal with our siloed disciplinary structures going forward? Of course, in the end, you brought us back to the context of Africa and challenged us to think about the implications of digital technology for the African university. Each one of us needs to ask the question, what does this mean for our university? And of course, you have indicated that society is looking to us universities to help deal with many, many challenges that we face. And you have indicated the importance of standardization, being aware of the opportunities and challenges that come with this technological explosion. Universities must lead. Our societies are looking to our universities to lead. Thank you very much, Peter. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this session. Now we will invite our plenary, our speakers. I must welcome you and say good morning. Habari za asubuhi. And welcome you to the third session of the fourth ARUA Biennial International Conference, which is hosted by the University of Lagos, the University of First Choice, and the nation's pride. The theme for this morning's session is Technology and Changing Higher Education Practice. How should African universities respond? We have three speakers this morning. Their CVs are reflected in the conference brochure, so I'm not going to read that because I know you can read. Let me invite them. Professor John Ifa, Professor Ruth Ghanem, and Professor Adeniyi Ishafiade. Who is Ishafiade? John? Right, great, thank you. So the first speaker is Professor John Ifa. John is the Director of Institutional Planning and Research at the University of Ghana. and will address us on the digital innovation and transformation of higher education institutions in Africa, opportunities, challenges, and responses. John.
Good morning. So first I want to thank ARUA for the opportunity for this platform and for my own university. I know my Vice Chancellor was here yesterday, but she's not available, but my Pro-Vice Chancellor is represented. Thank you. So I also want to thank Peter for the keynote because it sets the tone and the background for whatever I'm going to talk about. Unlike some of the earlier presentation, my presentation is largely based on the experience of what African universities have been through in the area of digital technology, an attempt to make some transformation. Sometimes in the field of IT and information systems, we try to separate automation and transformation. And sometimes there's a confusion whether we are just applying the technology or are we attempting to transform. And in going through this, it's more of applied. This more applied from the experiences, some experiences that most of our universities went through, especially as it was triggered by the COVID-19 and in the rush. We were separated geographically and how we had to do things. But it looks like after the COVID, we are going backwards. And then the debate, we need to reflect about the opportunities that these digital technologies provide. Are there some challenges and are there some responses? I think the challenges are even being experienced in this room. So yesterday, my Vice Chancellor sent me a text message, and she was expecting me to read it and do something. Unfortunately, my Wi-Fi was not working, and I saw the message after the lunch, but what I was to do was before the lunch. And I think this is very typical in Africa. So whilst we try to make use of these digital technologies, we have some challenges. So I'll go through, but most of the things are to raise issues for our reflection and discussion rather than being more of giving exactly what it is that is to be done. All right, so since it's more applied, these are the things we go to digital innovations, and then we look at some transformation in higher education institutions in sub-Saharan Africa. And the attempt is to look at the academic student life cycle, how we get students into our institutions till how they leave our institutions to industry or come back to take a higher degree. And then we look at some of the challenges. And I think, as I said, most of these were encountered during COVID and being still encountered. And then I'll raise some responses that I think, but that definitely will not be exhaustive. So there will definitely be other responses that we can reflect on. I think Peter talked about digital technologies in a very broad way. So here is an attempt to give some examples, and these are some of the typical example digital platforms that makes it possible for people in dispersed geographical locations still come together and do things, communicate, collaborate, and I think these are, if it were purely in the COVID era, I believe this conference would have been held on digital platform. We will still be in our locations, but we'll make an attempt to interact. And that is still going on. I know some people are joining us virtually. And then these are also enabled by video conferencing technologies that we are all familiar with. Another interesting one is QR code, which is quite recent, where we move from the physical. So you may have an image. I think there's an image at the back of some of the brochures. So you take your phone, you have a QR code camera, you just scan it, and straight away it takes you to where resources are. It's a very small technology, but quite interesting one about how to link for things rather than memorizing web addresses, www.this.that.that, and sometimes you get confused, and when you forget something, you lose your way. Blockchain is also another interesting one. And this is quite interesting, and I'll talk about it later, especially in relation to fake certification. These days, people are able to produce all sorts of certificates and to go to look for employment or to go to look for admission. And sometimes it's quite difficult to distinguish between which is the right one and which is not. Previously, the argument was that, okay, so where is the original? And the way original and photocopy had been used over the years, and the understanding is that the original was colored, whilst the photocopy was what? White. That has been the conception. But these days, it's very, very easy to create the colored as fake and get every information that you need, such that the fake even looks more authentic than even when you get the original one. These are some of the interesting things, but how do you connect? And sometimes connecting back to the original institution to certify this is not quite easy. Social analytics, yes, social media, we are all familiar with it. Smartphones, embedded systems, and AIs, which we have heard much about. So these are, it's not exhaustive, but these are some of the examples that we have attempted through, when COVID began, through trial and error. And every university was in a hurry to find out which one works, which doesn't work. And then even on individual faculty level, trying to see which one will work for you, which one won't work for you. And of course, we went through all this struggle, and it looks like as the COVID has gone down, we have come back. The question is, don't these still have opportunities for us? Okay, so looking at digital transformation, we can look at it from some of the processes that we do at the university and see how we can have an innovative way of doing this without necessarily having face-to-face contact. So in the attempt, we've been trying to replace face-to-face contact with mediated contact. And what I mean by mediated contact is that there is a technology that interfaces people or individuals who are trying to correspond instead of having a direct contact. And this technology usually driven by the internet or any digital platform as we know. And also the same goes with communication, and which we've been doing with digital communication. I mean, all these video conferencing and other things. Then looking at replacing digital documents and then storage and transfer. There is a very interesting scenario here. And I think one of the constraints is, which a lot of universities and institutions are going through, is a signature. Now, the signature is a very, very interesting one that we are struggling with, because usually people want to still sign. And what is interesting is that they will create a digital document, then print the digital document, then use a pen to sign the document, and then scan this document back. And sometimes when I see it, it sounds something to me. Although there is a technology for digital signature, but it's not also so straightforward because these are based on some algorithms and some codes, which people don't find it easy to interpret. So your signature may be predefined with some numbers, which is not also familiar. So it's document itself has become a struggle where we swing between the digital and the physical. And then capturing data in the native forms where we do away with physical paper and physical contact. Some of all these have been attempted. And then one big question which I think we have to start thinking about, and AI has become a topic of discussion throughout. Will faculty or lecturers be replaced by AI? We are currently reading some interesting innovations about where men are being created as robots and women are being created as robots. So those who don't want human beings as husband and wife are now be given the opportunity to marry a robot, because that robot can do everything you need for you in your family. This, I don't have an answer, but I think it's something we have to start thinking about. Because what is becoming interesting is that some of these innovations are not coming from us as researchers. Previously, researchers will lead the innovation and then industry will follow. But now there is a turn where industry is trying to do anything, and then as they come out with their digital innovation, then we, the researchers, now pack our tools, and we now start to understand them. So some of these are becoming very, very topical issues. So maybe we are on a process of being replaced where we are no more needed, and then robots will do the teaching in the classroom. Okay, so these are some of the generic things, but in South Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, this has largely been triggered by the COVID-19. I think there was some hesitancy initially to digitalize. People are used to what they do, and when you try to change it, sometimes there's a lot of risk. But COVID forced us because we had to physically close down the universities and go home. And then the question is, how do we continue? All right, so this diagram is just a summary of the cycle that typically universities go through. We advertise our programs, and then the potential students will apply. We try to do admission, maybe take them through some orientation, they do registration. I should have added teaching, but then we go through teaching and assessment. Then there is graduation and certification. Some of these areas are not too problematic when you replace them. Like advertisement is just providing information, so there isn't so much an issue. Application is also similar. But as I mentioned about fake certificates, when it comes to admission, that raises its head. You are in a hurry. Everybody is in a hurry receiving documents. How do you even know that some of the documents you are receiving are not written by the applicants themselves? Or as we are talking about GPT and other things, just go online and ask technology to create some of these documents and submit them. Then the orientation is also providing interactive information and similar to registration. Part of the challenge is largely also in teaching and assessment, and then I'll go more detailed into that. Graduation has also been online, and I think some universities have done this fairly quite well. Certification is also another issue, and I think I spoke about fake certificates. How do we deal with all of these things? So I'll try and go into the details of this, and then we see how we deal with it. All right. So some of the innovations are already reality, and I won't spend so much time on them, using social media for advertisement, digital platform for the application, admissions, orientations, and other things, and then teaching and learning with interactive platform. But learning management systems supporting assessments and examination, and then video platform for graduation. Okay, so let's look at some of the opportunities, the further opportunities. The earlier ones were just to support what we're already doing. The question that comes is, largely we produce certificate as a document, largely printed physical document, and then we try to put some kind of features that we think that people cannot easily scan. The issue is that we have an opportunity for digital certificates. These are not going to be papers, but they could even be a number that can be traceable to the original institution. And we will come back to how to respond to this. Joint degrees in some, okay. So I'll reduce it, I think, because of the time. Joint degrees are also an opportunity. This is not very much prevalent in our environment, but maybe can ARUA institutions, a student sign up and have a joint degrees, have a joint certificate? Because of digital technologies, I think this is more opportunity for us. Shared laboratories are also available. When we look at the various institutions, some are more endowed with resources and infrastructure, such as laboratories and digital infrastructure, cloud systems. Can some of these things be shared, regardless of where you are? And I think ARUA offers platforms for that. Okay, so looking at some of the challenges, we are looking at cost, and I think I won't go too much into it. We all understand cost is a very big deal when it comes to using this. Instability of the internet and related infrastructure, both from the institution side and for the individual learner side. I had an experience in being in a village in Ghana where you can get connection only under a particular tree. So you have to walk to that tree if you want to make, yes. And we expect students in those areas to participate in our learning. These are issues. Digital divide. Sometimes we think that we stay in a city and everybody has the same access as we are. It's a big issue to deal with. Fake certificates, as I spoke about. Here, there isn't much time, but blockchain and QR code comes in here quite handy. What blockchain does is that it linked every document to previous transactions. So if I'm holding a certificate, you can trace it back to the institutions that offered it, the course that the person took. In fact, throughout the whole person's lifetime, all these things are, so institutions are not isolated. They are chained together, and you can easily verify this. Because of time, I think I'll pick one or two. Outsourcing of assignments, assessments, and examination. I think some of us tried to assess students online. The big question is, how do you know that it is the person taking the exam who is actually the student? And there have been evidence where students have outsourced this to people. And in fact, some of the countries, when you go online, there is an industry here where people have set up industry to write theses, including PhD theses. And they have prices online for it. So you can contact them, they will write the thesis, and they will coach you how to go and do the oral examination and pass. So all these are challenges that we have to deal with. And also, most of the technologies that we are using in our part of the world are not developed by us. And some of them don't solve our own problems. How do we deal with some of these things? Okay. Yeah. So some of the new opportunities, as I said, we have to share infrastructure, share experiences, and collaborate with governments and telcos, because we have to work as a team. Most of the challenges I'm talking about from the technological side, we don't have control. We cannot control our own access. I was speaking about QR code and blockchain to help address fake certification so that we can always trace back documents. So if you give me a certificate, I use a QR code scanner, put it, and directly it sends me to the source, and I can check. And then video-based examination centers to know that whether the student is actually the one who is taking the exam remains an issue that we have to deal with. And maybe local expertise to design technologies that fit our environment. I think my time is up, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. Our second speaker for this session is Professor Rush Ghanim, who is an Associate Provost and Dean of International Programs at the University of Iowa. Rush.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to so many people. First to the ARUA organizers who've done an absolutely fantastic job putting together this conference. I'd also like to, oh yes, please. I'd also like to thank the tech team. They have multiple PowerPoints to manage over the course of the 3 days, and they're kind of the unsung heroes of this conference, so please. And then finally, I'd like to thank Professor Sunday Adebisi, who is our main contact here at the University of Lagos. Sunday is what we call in French a touche-à-tout, which means that he's kind of a jack of all trades. He kind of knows everybody. He does everything, and his work, I think, must be appreciated. So please give a round of applause to Professor Adebisi. Okay, very good. So today I'm going to talk about sort of how the University of Iowa is dealing with transnational education on a very practical level. I've enjoyed all of the talks that I've heard so far. Many of them are conceptual in nature. Mine is a little bit more, I would say, on a smaller kind of local level. It deals with kind of practical and applied methodologies that can help build collaborations as we move into the post-pandemic world. So, as I said, we are very proud, University of Iowa is very proud to be part of this conference and to be part of ARUA, and we are very grateful for the invitation. I should probably tell you a little bit about the University of Iowa because you've probably, in some cases, never heard of it. It is a Research One institution or a comprehensive research university in the middle of the United States, the north central part of the country, kind of near Chicago. We have many collaborations in Africa, in Senegal. In fact, one of our key partners is here today, as well as Nigeria, here at the University of Lagos, in Tanzania, the University of Dar es Salaam, who is proudly represented here at ARUA, as well as Kenya, and in South Africa. And I'll talk a little bit about those collaborations over the course of my talk. Similarly, the University of Iowa has welcomed many students from the African continent over the years. We've literally had hundreds. We have alumni really all over Africa, and we've been touching base with them here in Lagos during this particular trip. Perhaps one other thing to mention is that the University of Iowa, as I said, is a comprehensive research institution. However, it specializes in certain fields. It's very strong in the health sciences, very strong in business, strong in the STEM fields, writing and communication, and also education, sort of teacher training in particular. We've had specific success in teacher training programs in Ghana. When we talk about engagement, and here I'm talking more about memoranda of understanding, much of these partnerships, or much of this engagement hinges on faculty connections, that is to say staff connections, the professoriate. So if you have professors who are interested in working with us, we are certainly interested in talking to you. The University of Iowa seeks to increase its presence here in sub-Saharan Africa, and as a result, we would enjoy having further discussions with you and knowing how we can connect our faculty or our staff to yours. We would also underscore that in building these connections, the inclusion of graduate and professional students is essential. This is because we are a Research One institution. The graduate and professional students, when they become part of an international collaboration, are able to build their career portfolio. And I should also mention that most of our students who come to Iowa from Africa are at the graduate and professional level. That is to say that they are pursuing either doctoral degrees or master's degrees. Now, when we talk about building partnerships and these faculty connections, it does require some investment by the university, but mostly in terms of time and effort. There may be some money involved, and my office can certainly help with that. What we are looking to do is to create larger projects that can be sustained either through grant funding, through central banks, or through governmental support, or even private foundations. And in these initial stages, there's no doubt that technology is an efficient and rapid way to build these connections. And we were talking at the reception last night and said that under the old model, pre-pandemic, what many colleagues preferred to do was to make on-site visits and then see afterwards if collaboration was possible. Now, in the post-pandemic world, the first step is usually almost always virtual. That's how we prefer to operate. This can facilitate knowledge exchange. It can even facilitate sort of personal relationships, and it's the best way to move forward. And then we move toward face-to-face interactions. So I'm going to outline a progression today of how to practically build relationships that lead to sustainable projects. And the first part of this progression or sequence is what we call speed networking. It's also been jokingly referred to as speed dating among academics. Now, these particular examples come from our Iowa Global Health Network. The Iowa Global Health Network is a collection of faculty or staff from the health sciences. So at Iowa, that means the College of Medicine, College of Public Health, College of Dentistry, College of Nursing, and the College of Pharmacy. This is an affinity group of faculty that reports to my office, and we work in conjunction with our Office of the Vice President for Research. And what we do is we convene groups of 12 to 14 faculty, 6 to 7 from each institution. So an institution here in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, and an institution here in in Iowa. Now, the speed networking format consists of 5 to 7 minute conversations to explore areas of common interest. And to give you a couple of examples, one is that during the pandemic, we actually worked quite closely with the American University in Beirut to work on strategies to combat disinformation about the spread of COVID and the implementation of vaccines. Similarly, just earlier this month, we held a speed networking session with the University of Johannesburg to look at the social determinants of health. We are in the process of doing the debrief and summary. We've scheduled some follow-up meetings, and we expect that collaboration to move forward shortly. So during these speed networking sessions, everyone talks to everyone. Basically, the format is 60 to 90 minutes of breakout rooms. It's very intense. It's very high energy. But we feel that the faculty are particularly motivated and particularly stimulated, and they come out with some really interesting talking points or action items that they can follow up on. We always do at the end of the conversation sessions a debrief and synthesis where we try to emphasize interdisciplinarity. Now that is a term that's been brought up multiple times. Peter used it in his talk earlier this morning. I think most of us know what interdisciplinarity is and why it's needed. But by the same token, I think that we also need a refresher on kind of the purpose of interdisciplinarity. And I think there are really two. One is that interdisciplinarity allows us to ask questions and find responses that hadn't been raised previously. Similarly, because the emphasis of my talk is more sort of practical than it is conceptual, is that we are in a situation where we need to share resources. We need to share human resources, we need to share financial resources. And interdisciplinarity, in breaking down the silos, allows us to do that more efficiently. So out of these speed networking sessions, we attempt to establish research teams that are charged with follow-up, to develop project outlines and also implementation procedures to see how a particular project can bear fruit in the future. So in terms of outcomes, this happens on both, I think, a social and an academic level. The faculty get to know each other. So you have a group of anywhere from 15 to 20 faculty who had no idea who they were beforehand, but now they at least have a nodding acquaintance with one another. As we said, the environment is quite stimulating. People are engaged more than they would be in just sort of a regular kind of one or a larger kind of Zoom meeting discussion format. There are action items required, so we do stress accountability and follow-up. We also ask and require that the groups set deadlines and goals for their follow-up mission. And then they also need to identify internal and external sources of support. So internal sources of support would be institutional. My office can certainly help with that. In many cases, our partners in Sub-Saharan Africa or the Middle East or wherever it may be can also do that. And then the goal is to obtain outside funding as well so that we can build larger and more sustainable projects. So the next step after the speed networking are webinars. And this is more sort of where the research and discussion mission comes in. So what we do with the webinars is we select themes and panels. We seek a balanced representation between both institutions, and balanced means gender. It also means that we would seek graduate and professional students. We need to have as many voices as are reasonably possible represented in these panels. One example that I can cite immediately is that we have a webinar coming up with the University of Dar es Salaam. It's called Bridging Voices, and it deals with foreign language or world language pedagogy as it relates to teaching Swahili language in the United States and also here in Africa. Normally, in terms of staging the webinar or preparing for it, We have a sort of a pre-webinar session, which is kind of a dress rehearsal, where we go over the questions. We also, and I usually serve as the moderator. We then outline answers and make sure that there are certain talking points that we emphasize or hit on during the course of the conversation. Okay. In terms of how to market the webinars, we do underscore that it's necessary to get support from the deans and the VPs. Now, all of us in this room live and breathe international engagement. This is what we do. I think most of us are supported by our central administrations. I know that I am, but it doesn't necessarily mean that our VPs, our presidents, are as aware of what we are doing as they could be. They might not necessarily prioritize it the way we do. So we make sure that those in central administration are cognizant of these projects and that they get some form of publicity. So marketing and advertising is essential. This can take all sorts of forms. So normally we draw up graphics for the webinars. We advertise the webinars on social media, on various listservs to get the largest audience possible. And one advantage to conducting webinars on both sides of the Atlantic or on both sides of any ocean is that with international audiences, the public is always larger and usually always more engaged. You get more interesting questions and you get better exposure. So the webinar, as we know, consists of short presentations followed by Q&A from... Very good. Followed by Q&A from the audience, and we seek to raise maximum awareness and participation. Okay, so the next step in the sequence is global classrooms. So ideally, webinars can lead to global classrooms. Global classrooms are jointly designed and conducted by the partner institutions. These are courses that are actually part of the same curriculum. So the students take the same class at both institutions, and they connect remotely via video conference. The global classrooms are taught by faculty at both schools. It is a completely combined and reciprocal endeavor. So with global classrooms, the assignments are the same. The format lends itself to project work. I think the best example that I can cite is that for several years, our Tippie College of Business has conducted a global classroom with the University of Business and Technology in Kosovo, in the capital Pristina. And there the students deal with certain management and marketing issues where they, for example, have been looking at app development, for instance. There, as you can imagine, the capital of Kosovo, Pristina, is not unlike many world capitals. It has a parking problem. This particular group of students is very tech savvy, and so they developed an app where users can use satellite technology to determine where parking spots become open in particular neighborhoods in the capital. And so if you have this app on your phone, you get a notice as to when the parking spot is available, and then you can take it. Now, there have been some issues with that app. Nonetheless, this is the kind of innovation that we seek to stimulate. So the students present their projects as a team. We talked about the app development. We also tried to bring products to market in the agricultural sector through the global classroom. There are many sort of startup small agricultural businesses in Kosovo that our students and the students in Kosovo have worked with to develop ways to make their courses or make their products more attractive, more saleable to to audiences outside of their local communities. And so what we try to do in these global classrooms is to build teams, build relationships over the course of a semester that can ideally conclude in a 2-week on-site visit where the students can get to know each other face-to-face, they can work on capstone projects, and get a sense of how they might work together moving forward, and they can cement those personal and academic bonds that they've created over the course of the semester. I should mention that on a practical level, the students do receive a certificate or some kind of credential upon completion, so that this goes on their transcript, meaning that when they graduate, apply for jobs, a potential employer can ask them questions about the notation. Oh, I saw that you got this certificate in a global classroom in Kosovo or with an institution in Africa. Tell me more about that. What does that mean? As a result, the students are more marketable when they go out and get a job. So, just to conclude, the current moment is optimal to maximize these opportunities because everyone now is accustomed to working in a hybrid format. The initial costs of this sequence or this progression are quite manageable. And the key is to get faculty, students, and administrators on board. Once you create a model of success, you can use that to advertise, to bring other students and faculty on board, and then the model perpetuates itself. So we believe this is a solid and effective and sustainable way to build international partnerships. It's also simple and practical, and it's something that everyone can do. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you very much. The last speaker for this session is Dr. Adeniyi Isafiade, who is a professor in the Department of Chemical Engineering at the University of Cape Town. Adeniyi. Video that.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I would like to start by saying thank you to ARUA for organizing the conference and for also inviting me. So many things can be commended or commendable about the conference, and for me, one of the ones that stand out is the food. It has been delicious. So thank you very much. Okay, so I'll be building on what we've been hearing so far in the conference since yesterday. And yeah, so that's my university in Cape Town, South Africa. So, well, my specialization is process modeling and optimization with emphasis on resource network optimization. However, what I'll be talking about is in the field of education, which is not actually my expertise, but I'm beginning to see that for education to be more responsive to the needs of the society, especially in the African context, then we need to make use of technology to maximize the opportunities to achieve what education is supposed to achieve. Okay, so this is the outline of my presentation. I'll kick off with just talking a little about the dynamics in the education landscape. We've heard so much about that, so I wouldn't dwell too much on it. But I'll be emphasizing what is known as immersive technology in education. I guess some of us may be familiar with immersive technology and the benefits of immersive learning. Then go into open source software, internet resources. Again, I wouldn't really go into the details of those, But I think there are so much opportunities in that space in terms of open source software, internet resources that our academics can use to enhance teaching and learning. Also, the learning management system, which became very much useful during the COVID period. And for many universities, they've more or less stuck to it, and so they're sort of looking at more innovative ways to keep using it. Also, using technology to aid collaboration. We've heard some things about that, but I'll still talk a little more. And also the ChatGPT, which sort of seems to be disruptive in the education sector. But I don't believe it is disruptive, because some time back when Google was still new, we thought, we never knew that the benefit that would come with it. And so also for me, I think ChatGPT is probably the same as well. I think the challenge to us as academics, as far as ChatGPT is concerned, is that it's a wake-up call to us to be more innovative in the way we teach our students, to be creative as well. That's very important. Okay, so the Bloom taxonomy, which is more or less about the fact that teaching does not necessarily equate to learning. You know, as a lecturer, you may come into the class, use all sort of technical terms, talk so well, teach so well, demonstrate so well, and you think the students have learned. It may be that the student will still go back to YouTube to learn those things, read textbooks, and still pass the exam. Right, so we must adapt teaching to the learner's needs, especially considering the African context. So the education landscape is fast evolving with technology, right? And technology is a key driver, but the fundamentals must still be taught. As an example, in engineering, we must still teach the first law of thermodynamics. We must still teach Newton's law of equation. Those are fundamentals that have been established. We still must teach those, but the question then is, how do we make use of those fundamentals in the age of technology for the student to understand and for us ultimately to be able to solve the society's problem? So there is what is known as blended learning, which is what became popular at the time of COVID. Combining the traditional way of teaching with use of virtual or remote teaching mode and experiential learning. Experiential learning for me is so interesting because it has to do with learning by doing. For me, because I come from the engineering background, I feel you learn more or better as an engineering student when you are able to do that's using a model or the real life a system that you are learning about. You're able to do things with it and see how the system will respond if you change one or two things. That for me is very important. So the goal is to promote active learning and engagement. So looking at this VARK model, which has to do with VARK. Some students learn, not just students, even us as academics, we learn by visual, the things we see, the diagrams, while some learn based on what they hear, sitting down to hear the lecturer talk through discussion with their peers. Some is by reading and writing. Some will read all kinds of